You know, the main thing that I've been seeing recently is I feel like my content, and especially even more so content of women who are larger than me, of plus size women, of women of color, is their content gets censored.
Hey everyone, I'm Abby Sharp. Welcome to my new series, Fed Up. Every episode, I will be sitting down with a fellow influencer or content creator to ask some tough questions and have real, uncensored, unscripted discussions without the shame and judgment. Because we're all just a little fed up, right?
I'm fed up with this world.
So today I'm very excited because we're going to be chatting with one of my favorite lifestyle creators and new mom, Schultzy. Now, before we dive in, I want to remind you all to check out my disclaimer, including a trigger warning, both for dieting discussion and also infertility and pregnancy loss discussion. I also want to remind you all to subscribe to this channel and ring that little bell so that you never miss out on an episode. But first, let me tell you about my sponsor, Cometeer. There is a reason why I don't critique people's coffee orders here on Abby's Kitchen. Coffee, to me, is sacred. It's like religion. Like, you mess with that, you're asking for trouble. So naturally, I'm always down to try new coffee. And I have to say, this Cometeer coffee is a total game changer. The way it works is that Cometeer partners with the best regional specialty coffee roasters, then grinds and brews the coffee to perfection before flash freezing it to lock in freshness and flavor. Then instead of waiting for anything to brew, you just add a capsule to 8 ounces of hot water, cold water, or milk and watch it melt together. Honestly, this has already given me back hours of my life that I otherwise would have been waiting for fresh coffee to brew or for the local barista to call out my name. So for hot coffee, you just add a frozen capsule straight from the freezer to a cup and add 8 ounces of hot water on top to melt and stir. And for a cold iced latte, you just combine 6 ounces of milk and ice and then pour the melted capsule on top and mix it up. It's super smooth and balanced and delicious and a great time-saving addition to my morning routine. So if you want to try Cometeer out yourself, they've got a special offer for fans of the channel. So right now you can get $20 off of your first purchase using my purchase link below. That's 10 free capsules of coffee and always free shipping. So thank you so much for joining me, Sierra. I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I'm a huge fan of your channel, so it's an honor to be here.
First of all, for folks who maybe aren't already followers, they definitely should be, but can you quickly explain, a bit about who you are and what you cover on your channels?
Yeah, so I make fashion and lifestyle videos on my main channel, and I kind of very publicly discovered the body positive community and went on this confidence journey throughout the lifespan of my channel. So that's become like a really integral part of what I do there. And then also I have a vlog channel with my husband. It's called Sierra and Steven IRL. And there we just kind of started documenting our life. That was kind of the thing to do like 5 years ago, was start a second channel. And so we did that, and it's really been a wonderful space for us to document our journey, trying to conceive and then going through my pregnancy and then now having my daughter, Grace.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I'm a huge fan and I love both of your channels. There's always something new to learn and also just fun to watch you guys interact. I love it. But I want to chat about, diet culture, because obviously you mentioned body positivity and diet culture is all around us. But it seems to me that you're really able to see through a lot of that and really stay focused on what works for you. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your history with food and dieting and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. It's definitely not been the case for most of my life. And that's been a new thing, I would say, over the past 5 years for me, of just learning to cut through all the noise and be like, okay, what can I do to live my life in a way that makes me feel good, in a way that makes me feel healthy, and a way that just makes me the best version of myself. And I grew up in the 2000s, and so it was very much that attitude of diet culture, and what I always talk about for me is very much this pursuit of thinness. And for a long time, I disguised it as, well, I just want to be healthy, or, oh, well, I just want to feel good about myself. And actually what ended up happening is right before I went to college, I lost a bunch of weight. In not the most healthy way, and I expected that to fix everything. I was like, okay, I'm here, I'm going to college, and I have, the body that I always wanted, right? And all my insecurities should go away. But what ended up happening was I had never felt more insecure. I was hyper fixating on everything, and the reality is, it was probably one of the most unhealthy parts of my life, although I was much thinner. I was restricting, I was constantly chasing different diets, and my body was not in a good place. And so from there is when shortly after that, I started YouTube, and I discovered this body positive community, and I realized oh wait, I don't have to feel horrible about myself all the time. I don't have to constantly be obsessing over every inch of my body. And it's been very freeing for me to discover that. And it's definitely a journey that I'm still on, but I look back at that 19-year-old me who was just really struggling. And I'm like, wow, I really have come so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many of us, it doesn't really matter what your body looks like to begin with. It's like so many of us can identify with that, 19-year-old self, and that idea that, oh, if I, as soon as I lose this weight, as soon as I get a toned stomach, as soon as I change this part of my face or whatever, that I'm going to feel better about myself, my life is going to get better. And that's just not really how it works, right? We really have to do the work on the inside. And I love that you've shared that with us, and that, we get to see that vibrant self come forward in your channel and through your content, because it's just so obvious.
Thank you so much. That's so kind.
Okay, so moving on to motherhood, because I know you recently become a mom, like you mentioned, to little Grace, how old is Grace now?
She's 3.5 months.
You're almost through the weeds. That's just hold on a little longer. But I know you've got PCOS, and you've talked about your journey as you were trying to get pregnant. I'm curious, how did you feel when you got that diagnosis?
It was kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, right, it's this realization that trying to get pregnant is probably going to be a lot more complicated. But on the other hand, it's kind of like when I got my mental health diagnosis, it was almost a relief of oh, okay, so here's what's wrong, and now I can make a plan to fix it. Because when I didn't know what was going on with my body and why I was having these super irregular periods and why we were struggling to get pregnant, I didn't know what to do to fix that, because I didn't know what was wrong. And once we figured out what was wrong, I was able to work with my medical team and get a PCOS dietitian and really try to treat what was going on with my body. And then I was able to get pregnant. And so it is kind of a complicated thing. I think any sort of medical diagnosis, there's the one side where it's like, man, this sucks. Why is this happening? Why do I have this thing? And then on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, at least now we have the answer, and now we can work to try and make this better.
Yeah, I totally agree. You feel like you got the good and the bad. I know for me, when I was diagnosed with PCOS, though, admittedly, I think that since then a few doctors have actually questioned this diagnosis, but still, I know for me, I felt very scared, right? I actually didn't know that much about PCOS at the time. And I remember my RE telling me, and I feeling like it was like a death sentence. And of course that sounds so dramatic now, and obviously not true. But I just feel like hormones are so tricky because there's no cure, right? It's just management. And there were so many unknowns and things that I couldn't control. And because something with PCOS, and there is no actual cure for it, it just felt like a very scary diagnosis. It's not something that I could just take a pill and it would be gone. So yeah, I definitely feel you on that.
Yeah, I think that, especially with PCOS, that is one of the hard things, right? It's not like, okay, here's what's happened and there's a straight solution to this. There's so many different things to try, and it can I really do feel, at least for me, because I have bipolar disorder, it was kind of a similar thing when I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, is there isn't one answer, there isn't one cure. It's okay, let's try these different things and find something that works for you. And for me with PCOS, a huge part of one of the things that we tried that worked super well for me was just changing up my diet.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second, because I know you mentioned that you got to work with a dietitian who specialized in PCOS, which I was so happy to hear. So what do you think was if you could just pick one thing that has been really helpful for you in helping you manage your PCOS from a dietary perspective, what would that be?
Yeah, I never want to give medical advice because I am not the dietitian, but just what worked for me, the biggest thing for me was just upping my protein. I am a vegetarian, and that is not typically the best, most conducive diet for PCOS. And so my dietitian, she was so wonderful. She really helped. She was like, okay, you want to stay vegetarian, but we need to manage your PCOS. So here's what we need to try. And once I was able to up my protein, that just made a huge difference.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that so many people, I get texts and DMs every single day, messages from so many people who are struggling with PCOS. And of course, if you Google PCOS diet, you're going to get so much pseudoscience, so many restrictive recommendations, cut out gluten, cut out dairy, cut out all these other foods. And the reality is that I don't like to think about that. We actually have evidence that dieting can actually make PCOS worse. So I like to think about, how do we add more things into our diet? How do we add some protein to dress up naked carbs, as we like to say? And that alone, just focusing on adding that little bit of protein in there to make those what I call hunger crushing combos, that alone is going to make a huge difference for blood sugar management and PCOS management. So yeah, I'm really happy to hear that you were able to connect with a dietitian who was able to help you make some of those changes in also a non-diet way.
That's one of the things that I recommend the most is if you have access to a dietitian. I mean, I can't recommend it enough because like you said, there is so much pseudoscience on the internet. And if I had just Googled PCOS diet, I probably would have ended up doing more damage to my body than actual help. But working with a dietitian who actually specializes in that, I was able to, first of all, get legitimate advice. And second of all, I really trusted her as a source. And that was huge for me. She was also very helpful for me in making sustainable changes to my diet. It wasn't like the first appointment, a complete overhaul of everything that I'm eating. She had me kind of walk through a normal day of what I eat and then say, okay, how can we tweak these things to make it more PCOS friendly? And I think that, to me, was so important because coming from a background where diet was a scary word, right? Okay, diet means restriction. Diet means controlling every single thing that I put into my body. Diet means calorie counting. Working with a dietitian was a little bit scary at first, but it ended up being a really wonderful thing because it wasn't that at all. It wasn't about restriction. It wasn't about counting calories. It was about treating what was going on in my body with food to make my body work better. And it was a wonderful experience.
That's just music to my ears, and I'm so happy to hear that. And I always tell people, it is a red flag if you are working with a practitioner, whether that's a nutritionist or naturopath or a dietitian or doctor, whoever, and without giving you any legitimate reason, without asking you, what do you normally eat? What do you like to eat? What are your normal dietary patterns? If they're just automatically being oh yeah, cut out dairy, cut out gluten, it's why? If they don't give you a legitimate reason that is tailored to you and your needs, that's a huge red flag for me. That alone would be reason for me to seek out a different practitioner.
Yeah, and one of the things that my dietitian did is we did extensive testing of blood tests, of hormone levels, of all this kind of stuff. I did a month-long hormone cycle test to see what my levels were at different points during my cycle. And then we made our plan for my diet changes based on that. And so it really felt okay, let's figure out what's going on with my body, not just what is the one-size-fits-all change for PCOS. And
Totally.
A couple months after that is when I first got pregnant, and unfortunately I did miscarry that first pregnancy, but it was a big realization that, okay, my body can get pregnant, and my cycle is becoming more regular through these dietary changes.
Yeah, all little baby steps. So I'm so happy to hear that it worked out. Now, you just mentioned, of course, a miscarriage, and I know that you've had some bumps to baby. And I'm a fellow infertility warrior myself, and I've had a few pregnancy losses as well. But I know that I have immense thin privilege, and it was never my weight or my body that was being blamed for my circumstance. But I'm curious, what was your experience with the medical community when you found out that you had PCOS and you were having trouble conceiving?
I actually was really fortunate in that I had a really good experience with my medical team, and I never once felt like shamed or blamed for my size. And I know that is kind of an outlier for plus size women. And I also still have a lot of privilege in the body that I'm in. And so I know that the experiences of so many other people can be so much worse. But it was a really wonderful experience for me, in that I felt like my medical team truly cared about why this was happening and how we could fix it, and didn't just immediately jump to, it's your weight.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that, because I know statistically we know that, fat phobia in the medical community does play such a huge role in contributing to disparities in health. And infertility is just so frustrating and unfair enough. And also it does not discriminate. So it's really too bad that a lot of people are facing those kinds of struggles with the healthcare community, but I'm really so happy to hear that that was not the case.
I mean, especially with my dietitian, I seeked out a dietitian who specifically said that she did HAES and was body positive. And one of the things that really kind of took me aback in a positive way was in our first meeting when we were talking about the different changes we could make to my diet. She said, now with, getting your diet changed and having it more conducive to PCOS, that could possibly result in you losing weight. Are you okay with that? And that was a huge, talk about red flags. That was a huge green flag for me, where I was like, I think almost all the time in medical environments, weight loss is viewed as 100% a positive thing. And sometimes it can be, oftentimes it can be. But also, I think her bringing that to me from an emotional standpoint and just saying, hey, this might happen, you might lose weight, are you okay with that? Instead of, and good news, this might make you lose weight. I thought that was really wonderful. And it really changed the way that I look at diet, and that word diet doesn't have to be a dirty word. It can be something that's really positive for your life.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, if you think of it as a continuum, it's most of the time you're being told, forget about the health benefits of you maybe, being able to get your cycle back and conceiving, this could cause weight loss. Let's try to lose weight, to weight loss as a happy side effect, to just so you could lose weight, but that's absolutely not the purpose here. So I love that way of looking at it, and I agree that's such a positive spin on this, especially in the circumstance that you're in, and the fact that, of course, when we're dealing with PCOS, we're really trying to heal our cycle and improve our kind of reproductive health. So I think that should be top of mind. That should be the focus. And what happens to our weight is just a potential side effect.
Right. And at the point that I am in my life right now, I don't care if my body changes, if I lose weight, if I gain weight. I'm really happy with who I am and the way my body feels right now. But there were times in my life where my body changing, whether it was gaining weight or losing weight, could have been really triggering for me and really difficult for me. And so I just appreciated her asking that, because you never know the headspace that someone is in.
Oh, 100%. And as a dietitian, I would never want to trigger, disordered eating or kind of pull somebody back into that headspace. So I think that was a great fit, and I'm glad you found her. Whoever this dietitian is, she's a saint. She's on Team Abby. I love it. So obviously you found a unicorn in your medical community. And I'm curious, like, do you have any advice for folks out there in larger bodies about, trying to find a practitioner who, like you said, like doesn't just tell them to go away with this diet and come back when you lost 20 pounds, or like are pressuring them to kind of restrict or diet at such a critical time like pregnancy?
Yeah, I think honestly asking those questions in the first appointment, or if you can get in contact with them before the appointment, that's even better. I think it's so important to find medical providers who not only you trust, but who you feel really comfortable with and with bringing up what's going on in your body. And like I said, I was super lucky to find that. My OB throughout my pregnancy was also wonderful. And the only time weight was brought up during my pregnancy was when I brought it up. And so I really appreciated that. I kind of went through my pregnancy kind of feeling like I was waiting, right, for something to be said or a little comment here and there or even something bigger being brought up. But I had told my OB at the beginning of my pregnancy, I was like, hey, if my weight at any time is becoming a health concern for me or the baby, please let me know. I'm happy to talk about that. And she said, okay, yeah, I'll let you know. Things look great right now. She never brought it up again. And at one point about, I think halfway through my pregnancy, I asked, hey, this is, looking at my paperwork, this is how much weight I've gained. Is that where I should be? Do you have any recommendations? And she was just like, no, looks great. Like you're in a great spot. We're happy with the way everything looks. And so let's just proceed as normal. And, I'm so grateful because I know, like I said, that's kind of an outlier experience for plus size women, but, I really lucked out.
Yeah, I am so happy to hear that. I don't know if this is the experience that you had as like a COVID pregnancy, because I also had a COVID pregnancy. My son is older than Grace, 13 months. So I was like first wave pregnancy. But basically one of the perks for me as a COVID mom was that there were just fewer appointments, fewer opportunities for people to make offensive comments about my body that I was changing. I will never forget that, going into the OB's office at the beginning of my pregnancy, the nurse, of course, weighs me and made some comment like, oh, it's okay if you gain 2 pounds this week, next week maybe you won't gain as much, or something like that. And I thought, like, am I some kind of robot where I'm supposed to gain a perfect 1 pound every single week? Like, that's not how this is going to happen. And then interestingly, I switched to a midwife later on in my pregnancy, and she didn't weigh me at all. No, she never made a comment about my weight, big or small. Honestly, I think it's offensive to comment on pregnant people's bodies, no matter what, big or small. You never know how they're feeling. So if you say to somebody, oh, you're so tiny, like, you never know if that's also going to be triggering to someone who in their mind is thinking, am I doing something wrong? Is my baby in danger?
Right.
Like, am I just, are they malnourished? Are they going to be failing to thrive, etc.? And the same, of course, goes to telling a woman, oh my gosh, you look so big, which of course I heard a million times as well in my pregnancy. So for those who are watching right now, if you've got a pregnant person in your life, just don't say anything.
Just tell them they look glowing. You don't have to say anything about size or shape. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's the little comments that don't seem like a big deal, but they really chip away at you over time. And, for me, like I said, my OBGYN was really wonderful throughout my pregnancy, didn't make those comments. But when I was in the hospital, one of the postpartum nurses, this is maybe 2 or 3 days after birth, said something along the lines of like, and don't weigh yourself when you get home because you still will have like a couple pounds of bloat, and you don't want to be discouraged. And I remember Stephen and I both kind of being like, but why would I be discouraged? Like, why would I be discouraged about the way that I am or the size that I am? Like, I totally understand. Of course, there's going to be more bloat weight, but it's not going to change the way my body is. My body is, whether I weigh myself or not. I think a lot of those little comments that really don't seem like a big deal on the surface, but they are always rooted in that pursuit of thinness. And for me, there was a time in my life where I absolutely was triggered by numbers and weight. I'm kind of past that now. And so at my prenatal appointments, I was, comfortable just standing on the scale, seeing the number. It doesn't bother me. But I have some friends who have gone through pregnancy who are still, affected by those numbers. And one of the things that they said was incredibly helpful was just telling the doctors, hey, I have a history of disordered eating, or I have a history of, whatever it is, and saying, can I stand on the scale backwards? And that was incredibly helpful for them. So if you're someone who's, still kind of in the pits of getting through body image and disordered eating and numbers are triggering for you, I highly recommend, trying those kind of things, because if seeing those numbers is harmful to you, you don't have to see them.
Yeah, I mean, we call it a blind weight. We would never want that weight to then trigger in mom's head, oh my gosh, I gained 3 pounds this week or whatever, I should be eating less. Now is not the time to be dieting, folks, and your body is going to do what it needs to do to grow that life. And so, yeah, I think for sure engaging in a blind weight is a really great way to go. So interesting what that nurse said to you, because that triggered to me a memory of before I had children myself, that of course Hollywood paints this picture of you have the baby and then flat stomach again. That is not what happens, folks. Your uterus is still quite enlarged after having housed a child that is 8 to 10 pounds and a lot of water weight. And so, you still look a good 6 months pregnant for a little while after you deliver that baby. And so, yeah, it was definitely a shock to me with my first pregnancy that why do I still look pregnant? The baby's gone. But that's just totally normal, of course, to be expected. And also just unfortunate that nurse expected that your number one priority was going to be that your weight would drop when you have to recover, feed yourself, feed a baby, learn how to breastfeed, sleep, maybe, all of those way more important things than figuring out, how much weight you've lost.
Yeah, I had an emergency C-section, and so I'm trying to figure out healing from that. It was a kind of traumatic experience at first, and bonding with my baby and breastfeeding. The last thing on my mind was, I can't wait to get home and weigh myself and see, how much weight I've lost, but I better wait because I don't want to be discouraged.
Yeah, bizarre. What a
terrible
thing to say.
This pressure that's put on women from the first day out of the hospital of, all right, baby's out, gotta bounce back. The thing is, back to what? My whole life is different. My body's different. Not only have I gone through 9 months of changes, but I'm now a mom and I have a baby to take care of, and my routine and my life and what I eat and what I do is probably going to change. And if the phrase is bounce back, I don't want to bounce back to who I was before I had Grace, because my life is forever changed because of it.
Yeah, I always say the same thing. I mean, I don't want my 19-year-old body and life anymore, because my 33-year-old body and life for me is so much more full. And I'm not saying that, life without children is not full. But for me, of course, this was what I wanted. This is what I worked my ass off for. As an IVF mom, I really had to want it. This didn't just happen to me. And so I never want to go back to that. And I'm forever grateful for this body that housed and fed 2 lives. It is such an amazing thing, and it's such a transformation. So I really feel like we've got to get rid of that whole bounce back mentality, because it's not particularly helpful for new moms. But also, why would we want that? That's not what we signed up for.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting because I do think that there has been so much progress in the way that we talk about women's bodies and the way that we have kind of been fighting back against diet culture. But I think that hasn't really extended yet to the postpartum body. And I really hope it does soon, because I see so many comments and messages from my viewers who, are going through the same things that I am and are going, how are you handling this whole idea of bounce back, and how are you doing it? Because I feel like I'm drowning. And my heart goes out to everyone who's feeling that way and doesn't have the support to, really feel like they can settle into their new mom body, because it's a difficult thing to do. Even, I feel like I'm at probably the peak of my confidence in my life, and it's still hard where I am now. I can't imagine going through this when I hadn't gone on this body confidence journey yet. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to try and accept my postpartum body.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is why, for so many reasons, I think we're also grateful that we have content creators like you out there to help us through some of these, challenging questions and challenging times where otherwise the internet and the wellness community is just so rife with toxic diet culture and unrealistic body expectations, especially for new moms. The whole Fitspo world as it relates to motherhood it's a lot to take in. And so I understand why so many people feel the need to, sneak in that workout and like the every single moment that the baby's down. It's like, there are other things in our life other than just kind of getting ourselves back to that pre-baby body state.
Right.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned a support system. Tell me about, I know Steven's just so fantastic. We love watching him. We love seeing you guys interact. He's just such a gem. Like, you guys are such a like a bright ball of energy and light together.
Thank you.
And just so beautiful to watch your relationship grow, especially now as a dad. I mean, like, I cried through your birth story because I was like, he's gonna be such a great dad. But I'm curious, like, is there anything that he was able to help you with? Both in this postpartum journey and also in, the infertility journey and pregnancy and things like that. What was the most important gift that he gave you as a support system and team member?
Oh, that's such like a complex question, because I feel like I could just gush about him in 100 different things that he does. But I think postpartum, honestly, the biggest thing has been he's like given me the gift of sleep. Once I was able to pump and we introduced a bottle, he always takes either the late night feed or the morning feed, and I take the other one. And I cannot stress enough how amazing that has been for not only like my physical health and well-being, but also my mental health and well-being, because the sleep deprivation is real. And so having him help with that. And I think what's been really wonderful is never once has he acted like he's doing me a favor by doing that. It's always been, this is just as much his job as it is mine. And when I was breastfeeding and he wasn't able to, take one of the feeds from me, he woke up with me for every feed. And he sat there with me and talked with me, and we watched TV and we laughed. And I didn't feel like I'm alone in this and I'm up all night and I'm just stuck. I always felt like I had my partner with me to help me through this. And that's been really, really wonderful.
Oh, I love to hear that. And I totally agree. I of course, sleep is so important, and, getting those little moments for you, whether it's like to take a shower, like these are basic things. Like, of course we deserve these things, and feed yourself and all of those things that we obviously need to make time for. But I agree with what you're saying in that, like, none of those things are actually helpful if they come with a side of like guilt and like a guilt trip, because like as moms, we get enough of that, right? We are bombarded with, we're like this kind of narrative of us not doing enough, not being fit enough, not feeding our baby enough, or like not having unmedicated births, or not breastfeeding long enough, or whatever. Like, there's so much pressure on us from every angle, every direction. The last thing we need is to hear from our partner that we're not momming enough, we're not, doing enough in that regard as well. And you're a working mom too. Like, you are an entrepreneur. So I mean, I feel you on that. There's just so much to do. So I think that having a partner who is not only going to give you that time, give you those resources, but also not make it seem like they're doing you a favor it's
Yeah, what he always says, he's like, I don't understand why, because there is very much this attitude of when a woman is doing all the childcare, it's like, oh, well, of course, she's the mom. But when the dad does, it's like, Father of the Year. Oh my goodness. You are the greatest thing that's ever happened to this planet. And I remember Steven and I talking about that, and he's like, why do people praise dads for doing like the bare minimum? Like, that's kind of sad. Like, why is it expected that women will do everything and men who do anything are, you know, given a gold medal? And I remember I was saying, I sat down with him and I was like, Steven, you do realize you're the outlier, right? Like, it's amazing what you're doing, but this is not like the typical thing that people expect of a father. And I'm super grateful for it, but you know, a lot of people, this just isn't the reality for a lot of people. And I remember we kind of had this whole conversation about the expectations of a parental role from a mom versus a dad it's different. And it's sad. I don't think it should be different.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not. And of course, everyone's got to find, a family orientation and like a division of responsibilities within their household that works for them and doesn't make them feel resentful or, you know, over stretched and things like that. But yeah, it is unfortunate that our society has such different expectations for mothers versus fathers. And like you said, it's like a mom's just doing her job. A dad is babysitting their own child. No, that's not how it works.
One of the things that Steven and I have really tried to do, which I think has been really helpful for both of us and not trying to do that one-upping, right? Or that like guilting, is advocating for ourselves and asking for breaks when we need it. And really trying to honor what the other person needs, even when it's not super convenient. So, you know, if Steven's super exhausted, he'll be like, hey, I really need you to take the morning feed. I have to sleep. And I'm like, cool, I got it, no problem. And I think it's easy to get in the mindset of, well, now he owes me, right? Or I do something and it's now I owe him. Or now he owes me. And what it is really is not trying to keep track of those things, but just saying, I will always be here to help when you need it, and I know you'll always be there when I need it. And feeling empowered to ask for an hour to sit by myself. Him doing the same, feeling empowered to say, hey, I just want to go play video games for an hour. I'm like, yes, absolutely, go do that. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in the tallying of those things. But I think once you let go of that and you're just like, you know what? We are here for each other and we are going to give each other the breaks that they need. It's freeing. And I think it's not only good for our health as a couple, but I think it's better for like our whole family. It's better for Grace as well.
Oh yeah. There's nothing that'll like ruin a marriage faster than what I call like scorekeeping, like the scoreboard that you were talking about. But I want to get back to fertility for a moment because I know, you know, we talked about having a miscarriage before Grace, and obviously I'm so sorry for your loss, but so happy that you got your little rainbow. Was there anything that you did to help you heal and move on with confidence when you were able to conceive again? Or did you find, like I know you mentioned that you were just kind of waiting for something bad to happen. How did you get through that in your pregnancy?
You know, the first 12 weeks were really difficult. And I do feel like once I hit week 12, maybe week 11, a switch flipped. And I was like, okay, I think I'm in the clear. I think things are going to be okay. But it really was gradual. You know, I had 2 miscarriages. The first one was at 8 weeks and the second one was at 4 weeks. I think it was little things that made me feel better over time. It was, okay, we passed the point of my second miscarriage. Now we passed the point of my first miscarriage. Now I heard the heartbeat. Now we had each of those little things that I think built up my confidence. But one thing that really, really helped me, and I don't know if this is going to be helpful for everyone because not everyone is like as crazy about statistics as I am, but I looked up a chart of the statistic of miscarriage from day of pregnancy. So not even by week. It was literally by 3 weeks, 2 days, 3 weeks, 3 days. And in those early days, the percentage goes down pretty drastically day by day. And so I just told myself, if I wake up tomorrow still pregnant, my chances are getting better and better. And so every day I would wake up and I had the thing screenshotted in my phone and I would look at it and I'd say, okay, today there's a 73% chance that this pregnancy is going to go to term. Now there's a 78% chance. And going through all of those things, it was really helpful for me in that I felt like things were getting better and that if I could just make it through one more hour, one more day, my odds were going to get better. And by the time I reached 11 weeks and those odds were great, I was like, okay, I think I can delete this chart off my phone. I think that helped me through this difficult time. And I think now I'm ready to celebrate being pregnant. But it is really difficult. And I feel like I can say this because I had a difficult birth. I think the first trimester was more difficult than childbirth. Childbirth is incredibly difficult. I was in labor for 60 hours. I had an emergency C-section. But at the end of it, I got my baby. When you're 4 weeks pregnant and you're starting to get nauseous and you're so scared of losing this thing that you feel like you don't even have yet, 9 months feels so far off. And you don't get that instant kind of reminder of like, but I'm going to have my baby in a day or in a couple hours when you're in labor. It's like, will I have a baby in 9 months? I don't know. Is it worth it to go through all of this? And so to anyone who's watching this in their first trimester, who's like in the thick of that, like it is not going to be like that for your whole pregnancy. At least for me, it wasn't. I hope it's not for you. But things will get so much better.
Yeah, I totally agree. First trimester is the pits, especially when you're dealing with that kind of, and you've had losses before and you're, that is also on your mind and making things even worse and the nausea, like the whole combo, it's not fun.
And then at the same time, like trying to keep it a secret, like not telling people. And that's one thing for me where I do think, it's kind of just a societal thing of, we don't announce until the second trimester. After my first 2 miscarriages with my pregnancy with Grace, I said to Steven, I was like, you know what? I need to tell our families and I need to tell my close friends. And he was like, I'm 100% agree. And so we told them in not like a super, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, surprise reveal. It was like, hey guys, I'm pregnant and I need support right now because I'm only 3.5 weeks. And that was so wonderful for me. And I think you don't have to announce it to the world, but I think telling your support system can be incredibly helpful in getting through those first few weeks.
I 100% agree. And obviously it's a personal choice whether like you feel more comfortable waiting. Cause I've been in the thick of the infertility community for so long that some people feel so anxious that they need to hold on to that even longer sometimes in the first trimester because they're just so uncertain. But for me, I was the same way. I needed to tell my story. I needed everybody to know that I'm pregnant and I need your prayers and I need you to think about me and this baby to see us through, because I knew that if things did head south, that then I would really need their support. Then I would really need to talk to somebody. And I didn't then want to have to kind of disclose, the reason I'm sad and I can't come out is because I just had a miscarriage. It's like they were already in it with me. So yeah, again, totally a personal situation, personal choice. But I agree with you that was also something that was helpful for me to kind of get through that first uncertain stage of pregnancy.
Yeah, it's totally a personal thing. And I know that I'm sure plenty of people who would say, they actually prefer to it's easier when it's just keeping it to themselves. But something I didn't even think about until I told my mom about the pregnancy was that they were grieving too. They were grieving the pregnancy loss as well. They were grieving the loss of what they thought was going to be their first grandchild. And so, being able to go through the early stages of my pregnancy with Grace with them, I think was healing for all of us.
Yeah, I felt the exact same thing. I was I was so relieved to tell my family when we had a successful transfer after so many losses. And, you know, I also kind of felt like a need, like I want to protect them from that pain that I was feeling, like my parents and things like that. But once I kind of opened the floodgates and let everybody in, I was just so grateful for that love and support. So it was a good choice for me. Now, I know that the internet can be a really hard place, and we both work in this YouTube and content creator space. And, you know, particularly for people in larger bodies, it can be very cruel, and there's tons of trolls. And you've been so open about your struggles here in your community. I'm curious, did you get a lot of like fat phobic trolling? And if so, how do you not internalize that hate?
You know, it's interesting because my core audience is, you know, they're people who believe the same things that I believe and people who are on the same confidence journey that I am. And so my core audience, the people who watch, you know, all my videos and my vlogs and everything, they're the best. They're chill. They're, you know, they're not making those comments. But it's when I would have videos go viral outside my audience that it would invite in this community or this group of people outside my community who did make those comments. And at first, it's like, it's really painful. You know, the first couple videos I had that go viral and just seeing all of these comments of people just really picking me apart, it made me go, wow, maybe I'm not like as far along on my confidence journey as I thought, because this still really hurts. And then a couple months go by, you know, I kind of don't really have as many videos that are going outside my audience, and then another one happens. And then I started to feel more sad for those people. Because if they're holding me to this ridiculous standard, imagine the standard they're holding themselves to. And if they're sitting there picking me apart, imagine what they do when they look in the mirror at themselves. And it made me sad. I was like, you know what? I'm sad for them, and I'm happy that I'm not in that place anymore. And I think that shift is really when I stopped caring as much. And it also was a purposeful shift, maybe about 2 years ago. I think about around January of last year, where I said, maybe I don't want to be making videos where I'm trying to get a ton of views anymore. Maybe I don't want to go viral. Maybe I don't need, you know, 1 million views on a video. Maybe my like 200,000 is great, where all those people are actually getting something of value from the content and who are part of my community. And I kind of purposely stopped chasing views. And not only was that great for my community and, you know, not having to deal with all the things that come with a video going viral, but I think it was also just good for my mental health as a creator, where I stopped caring if my videos were getting a lot of views, because I knew that the value that the smaller viewership was getting from my videos was higher.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice for, you know, for content creators. And like myself, like I know that this world is tough. It's at times ruthless. People are mean. And I'm actually hearing from a lot of content creators right now that we're all really in agreement that the burnout is real. And if we're not creating content that serves us and that feels good to us and that is going to, you know, support our mental health, then it's just not worth doing. This is not worth killing ourselves over and not sleeping and, you know, none of that. This is YouTube. Like, we have to still enjoy what we're doing, or else we're not going to want to do it anymore. So I'm really happy to hear that you found kind of a content creation calendar and approach that's working well for you.
Yeah, I think when it really happened, that now that I'm thinking about it, is when I hit 1 million subscribers, because that was like always my goal with my channel, right? Is someday I want to hit 1 million subscribers, and that would be so amazing to get my plaque, and you know, that's like the ultimate goal. And then I hit 1 million subscribers, and I was like, well, now what? what was I chasing? What was all of this for? And I kind of sat with it for a little while, and I was like, what is my goal now? What am I doing this for? And I realized it's for the people who are getting something out of my videos that's more than just a view. It's for the people who this is a part of their confidence journey. It's for the people who are stumbling across this video just because maybe they're interested in the topic or fashion or lifestyle, and then walking away maybe thinking about their body in a little bit of a different way. And I realized that I can make that impact without having videos that are going viral outside my audience. And so I really just started to think about, okay, well, what kind of content do I like making, and what kind of content can I give something of value to my audience through? And I feel like since then, I have just been so much happier with the content I'm creating.
Yes, I totally agree. Super helpful advice. I know that you've used the term body positive, of course, to describe the content on your channel, like you spoke about. How do you feel about thin influencers using the term body positive to describe themselves and their experience?
You know, I think it goes beyond just thin influencers, but I think, you know, white influencers as well. I'm a white woman, and I've used the term body positive to talk about my channel and my journey for a really long time. But I learned over the past year or so that the body positive community was started by women of color, plus size women of color specifically. And that term has really become such an umbrella term that on one hand, it's wonderful because so many people are learning about this community and this, you know, mental shift that has been so freeing. But on the other hand, it's become such an umbrella term that people are forgetting where it came from. I didn't know where it came from. And the people who started this movement aren't being credited for it. And I think it's a difficult thing to navigate because it's amazing that it has helped so many people, but it's become such an umbrella term that it's no longer being credited to the people who needed this movement the most, which is the people who started it, plus size women of color. And so I've been really trying to be cognizant about making sure that I'm uplifting that community. And I've also started to try and change my own language to use body confidence to discuss my own journey, and use body positive as more of the term to discuss the wider movement. But it is so difficult because I never want to tell someone how to label their body or their journey. I don't think that's my place. And I think there's enough people in the world telling women how they should talk about their bodies, what they should do with their bodies. I don't want to be another voice in that. But also, I do think it's important that we all recognize that some people carry thin privilege, some people carry white privilege, and we need to make sure that we're uplifting the communities who need this movement the most.
Yes, I actually have a whole video on this, and I interviewed a few larger bodied people of color, content creators, and got their take on it as well. I've also really tried to kind of shift language and just be more mindful that, you know, out of respect that this term really wasn't designed for me, so I don't want to like purposefully profit from it or use it out of context. So, you know, I love body confidence. Sometimes I use body kindness. That's another really great term. And so I think that we can just kind of use those terms and just be more respectful of their origins and their history. But I'm curious, when you see straight size folks on social media, like pose on certain ways, to like, you know, point at their role or like show a less flattering angle, is content like that triggering, or does it feel like insensitive to you at all?
You know, it's complicated because on one hand, no matter what size someone is, they are going through their own confidence struggles. And like I said, when I was at my smallest size, when I entered college, I was at my most insecure. And so seeing a body that looked like mine at that time, who was embracing the imperfections, quote unquote, of their body, would have been really helpful for me. So I don't necessarily think that's wrong, but I do think it becomes an issue when that is now becoming the accepted, the digestible form of body confidence, of body positivity. And then when we see fat or plus size or larger body people who are doing those same things, but they're getting the barrage of hate that doesn't come from those straight sized people doing that, it kind of defeats the purpose, because then the people who are really being marginalized are not getting the support and the message that original post is supposed to do. So I think it's complicated. I don't think there's a straight answer. I think it's wonderful for people of all sizes to embrace their body, but I think, you know, there definitely is something to be said that when someone who is straight sized is, you know, showing a roll that only pops up when they contort their body a specific way, is posting that versus someone who's plus size there's a different response because we still consider one to be more digestible to the larger public.
Totally. There's definitely a double standard here. And, you know, for me, it's also not content that I like to make myself, because I would never want somebody to look at my body in, you know, what I suggest is looking bad or whatever, and for someone else to think, wow, like even at her worst, it's better than my best kind of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously, we can't control everyone's triggers and insecurities, but I know for me, it just makes me feel uncomfortable to have that responsibility.
Oh, if you think that's bad, wait till you see what my body looks like when I'm not twisted and contorted. That's just what my body looks like all the time. It's definitely complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel that you've had to endure unique challenges as like a plus size creator that a lot of folks with thin privilege wouldn't?
You know, the main thing that I've been seeing recently is I feel like my content, and especially even more so content of women who are larger than me, of plus size women, of women of color, is their content gets censored a lot more quickly than straight sized women. And it's so frustrating. Like I post, especially on TikTok and Instagram, I posted a TikTok of me just like, you know, showing my bump progression throughout my pregnancy. It got removed for, sexual activity. Sexual activity? I'm in a swimsuit posing with my baby bump. It's hard because, you know, I don't know if that content would have gotten removed if I was a size 2. How, I don't know, but I know that there definitely is a trend where people who have marginalized bodies, their content gets taken down much quicker and with much less cause.
Yeah, and that's just a perfect example of society's fat phobia. Like literally, if you look at the word fat phobia, it is like a fear. It is a discomfort with the body, with a larger body, with seeing more skin. You know, seeing somebody, like you said, size 2 in a crop top, you know, that nobody bats an eye at that. That's the norm on Instagram. Like that is what we see all the time. But seeing that same crop top in a larger body where there's just more skin to be seen, you know, suddenly that's a problem, that's offensive. And ultimately that is fat phobia at its finest. So I'm really sorry that you've had to endure that. That's mind-boggling to me, but also at the same time, it's like, just knowing what we know about Instagram and social media and all of those, you know, societal expectations, also not surprising.
Yeah, and I mean, my struggle with that is even just so small, so minuscule compared to what happens to so many other plus size creators. Like for me, it's a post or two getting taken down. For other people, it's getting completely censored by the algorithm. And it's such a awful thing that's going on, and I think the best thing is that more people should talk about it, and especially people who aren't having to deal with that, especially smaller creators, especially standard size creators who aren't getting censored in the same way, to speak out and say, hey, this is wrong, and we need to change these algorithms so that this doesn't keep happening.
And, you know, speaking of algorithms and social media, like, I'm not sure how much you are able to censor all the pseudoscience and diet culture there is out there in your life, but what are you most fed up with seeing in this whole online wellness space?
Oh, gosh.
If you could pick one thing.
You know what? I'm gonna go two things. So the first thing is actually kind of the opposite of what I feel like I've been kind of thinking over the past couple years, and that I'm kind of tired of people telling women what they should and shouldn't do with their bodies and their diet. I think a recent conversation that came up was with Lizzo, and she posted a TikTok about how she was doing a cleanse, and, you know, the comments were calling her out about how, you know, there's no science behind cleanses and this and that, and I totally understand that, but also I think we need to stop policing women's bodies, and if Lizzo wants to do her cleanse, let her do her cleanse. And I think that's something that has been a journey for me to figure out. For a long time, I was just like, anyone who's promoting diet culture and pseudoscience is wrong, and they need to be called out and they need to be stopped. But the reality is, she has been steeped in the same diet culture and the same pressure that all of us had. And if she's doing something for her and she's enjoying it, power to her. That's not what I'm gonna do, but I think it's great that she is doing something for her. regardless of what everyone else wants to say. And I think that's been a big turning point for me. But I think on the other side of that, it's so frustrating to see the constant cycling of fad diets. And this constant push of, well, have you tried this diet? Have you heard of this diet? This is new. And it's just learning how to cut out all that noise and find what actually works and what actually makes you happy and what actually works for your body. I think one of my pet peeves will always be people talking about harmful chemicals, because everything's a chemical, right? Like there, of course, are toxins and things that are not as good for your body, but I think I always cringe a little bit and get a little bit of that, I don't know if I'm gonna buy into the rest of what you're saying when someone says, oh, I'm on this chemical-free diet. It's like, well, water's a chemical.
Yeah.
Well, that banana that you're eating is filled with chemicals.
Yep, 100%. I agree on all fronts. And it's funny, like you've kind of like given this nice rounded answer of like so many things that like basically you summarized everything wrong in the wellness space right now. And actually, like I have a whole video on that whole Lizzo controversy, and my conclusion was exactly the same. It's like we wouldn't have given a smaller creator any kind of flack for doing a cleanse, but because Lizzo has been painted as this like BOPO hero, this BOPO queen, that automatically she's held to a completely different set of standards. But I think that we all, like, I believe in body autonomy. I believe that we all have a right to do what feels best to our bodies. And if drinking green juice and putting stupid like pads on your feet it feels good to you, power to you, go for it. You know, but at the end of the day, like I'm against the spreading of misinformation. And that's why I always say, like, you want to drink green juice and celery juice, I have nothing against celery juice. I have something against celery juice when it's accompanied with a side of psilocybin.
Yes.
You know, that's the distinction.
That's exactly it.
So,
Drink your celery juice if you like it, if you enjoy it. But don't tell me that celery juice is going to cure my PCOS, because it's not.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I think that,
and I think that's the problem.
yeah, that's where that distinction has to lie. I think for a long time I went too far in the other direction of, right, don't talk about this and don't say this and don't promote this. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, don't promote the pseudoscience of it. But if you want to drink your celery juice, if you want to do that, do your thing. Like you said, bodily autonomy. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I totally think we're on the same page. But I'm so appreciative of your time here, Sierra. I think you are just a ray of sunshine in this space and just such a pleasure to watch. And for those of you who don't already follow Sierra, I'm going to leave lots of links below so you can get on it. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Abby. It was a pleasure. I very much enjoyed this conversation, and I love your channel. So thanks for having me.
And that's all that I have for this episode of Fed Up, folks. If you liked it, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below on who you'd like to see me interview next. Subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye.